Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in about a minute and a half here. We find people usually join right on time, so just bear with us for a minute while we wait for everybody else to trickle in, and we'll get started. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, thanks again for joining us this afternoon. This is cybersecurity and AI webinar. Um, Feel free to use the Q&A function in Teams here or use the chat if you do have any questions or thoughts throughout the presentation. I'll try to leave a little bit of time at the end to address them. Keep in mind this is being recorded, so anything you type will be available on the recording. So don't type anything confidential or firm specific. Feel free to contact us directly if there's anything like that. So yeah, thanks again for joining us. My name is Colin Pierce. I'm the founder and CTO at Inderly IT. We do IT for law firms in Ontario, and we're also joined today with our CEO, Nolan Witkowski.
Hey, everyone.
So I'm going to cover, broadly speaking, two angles on this issue. The first being how AI is affecting sort of traditional cybersecurity stuff like phishing emails and fraud and stuff like that. And then the second half of the webinar will cover keeping your firm secure while you actually use AI tools and how to best choose them, use them, and make sure that your data and your client data isn't getting leaked somewhere where it shouldn't. It is kind of the Wild West with a lot of this stuff, and security is often second with new technologies, and that very much applies with this. So yeah. So first of all, why are you a target? You're thinking to yourself, maybe I work at a law firm with 5 people. Who cares about us? Well, lawyers are actually really prime targets for cybersecurity breaches and hackers. You have financial data, you've got sensitive data that can be used for blackmail. Often, depending on the type of practice you have, you might be working with trust accounts, you might be sending large wire transfers around, especially if you do real estate. You've probably got a huge Rolodex, which I'm probably dating myself using that term, but your contact list is probably massive. So if they can get in, they can go a lot of places with your data. And one thing we're actually seeing a lot lately as well is the sort of trust the senior partner culture, where firms are extremely busy. Senior partner asks you to do something, you get it done quickly. And what we're finding is the bad guys are really actually exploiting that as best as possible and sort of preying on that urgency. So yeah, for all those reasons, law firms are definitely a bigger target than your typical small business. Not to spread too much, doom and gloom and fear, but they are juicy targets, and people are going after them regardless of the size. 500 staff, 5 staff, it doesn't matter. People are taking their shots. So the first bit I'm going to cover is how AI is supercharging basically some of the traditional things. There's probably not going to be anything new in here in terms of knowing what phishing is and things like that. It's the same old stuff. People are sending emails trying to trick you into doing stuff. AI has made it a lot easier for them to do it at a much higher level of quality. So people using AI tools en masse will basically point them at public-facing information for either the individual or the firm, and they'll have an AI draft basically a personalized phishing email directly for you or for your firm. And this can cost 5, 10 cents, maybe $1 if it's a really juicy target. It's not very expensive to sort of bring AI tools to bear to do this stuff. So we are seeing that a lot. I get them a dozen a day. You would think a person wrote these emails, and they're coming after me, and they know things about me, and it's based on some obscure LinkedIn post I did 10 years ago and stuff like that. So we're really seeing phishing grow up a lot. To that end, personally at Inderly, we are constantly deploying, better anti-phishing tools, but training is such a huge part of it. You just have to be, super skeptical of everything you get in your email, and, basically never give out your password and things like that when you do get those. So what you can see is this is a very real case study. It happens all the time. Say you have a client or another firm you're dealing with, and perhaps someone within that firm was compromised. The attackers will essentially point all the relevant data that they've gathered from that firm into an AI and have the AI draft an email that is perhaps referencing an active ongoing matter. that you've got, and they can take the tone, they can take the subject matter, and they can say, hey, change these wire details for the Jones deal. And it's very, very difficult to tell that that's not real. And it's also lowered the barrier of kind of like copy skill that you need to have. So if you have like a tenuous grasp of English, you can draft some very convincing emails. So it's really broadened the scope of who can come after English speaking clients. Because again, you don't really need to speak a lot of English to have ChatGPT draft a really good and convincing email. So for that reason, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but especially around financial stuff, it's a good time now to make sure you've got controls in place in your firm to make sure that you're not falling for this kind of stuff. We're also seeing AI being used in voice and video attacks. Voices can be cloned from as little as 3 seconds of public audio. So if you've done an interview or you've posted some videos live on LinkedIn or something like that, it doesn't take much for a motivated attacker to take that and then create a video of you. So people are basically creating synthetic managing partners to, often it's an audio call. We haven't seen video in person, but definitely heard of audio calls that sound like somebody. And the only way you can really tell is like maybe there's a bit more of a delay than usual because the AI is doing its thing in the background or whatever. But there have been cases of very convincing calls. So even if people were skeptical and called the partner to follow up on this sort of suspicious email, well, I called them, it sounded like them, so we changed the wire details. Well, you can do that all with AI now. So not to say it couldn't be done before, it's just so much easier and so much more accessible for everybody to do it. So we're seeing that in the wild as well. The practical implication of this is, to me, one of the simplest things you can do is you have to have a pre-established callback protocol for the big stuff. So the biggest one, obviously, we see is the movement of money. So especially if you're dealing with real estate and wire transfer details and things like that, you can't trust if somebody emails you and says, change this, change that. You have to, before it happens, usually when you're setting up the matter or you're setting up the client, is say, what is the phone number that we call you at if we're doing this? So you get the phishing email, you get the fake call, doesn't matter. You still call the known number that the client gave you. That way, you're calling the right human, and you will, at that point, verify that it needs to be done. And that sort of protocol alone will cover most cases, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to spoof like a call back number. So if you've got someone's cell phone number, you've got their office line, an attacker can spoof that when they're calling you. But if you call it back, it's going to go to the right person, and you're going to get the confirmation that you need. So if you don't have this in place already as a policy in your firm, sit down and figure out what are the sort of high stakes things that our firm does. Again, it's usually to do with money, but perhaps you're transferring sensitive documents, disclosure, stuff like that. Just make sure you've got a protocol in place to say, if in doubt, this is our sort of final check that we can do with the client to make sure that we're actually supposed to be doing this. And again, unfortunately, you do have to set it up beforehand. It's not hard also, obviously, to like go and look up someone's office number and that sort of thing, but it's good to have that set up beforehand. The next thing we're seeing is ransomware. Nothing new really with that, other than it's kind of supercharging the attacks. So especially with some of the latest AI models that have come out, I'm not sure I buy 100% of the media hype about how they're not releasing it to the public and stuff like that. But the reality is, it is a lot easier to do traditional hacking, in the sense that you would think that somebody hacked the website. We didn't trick anybody into doing anything. We just found a problem in the code in whatever program we're working with, and they hacked it. And we are seeing that rising, and that's just going to snowball. Fortunately, the good guys also have access to AI, so they can use it to try to patch security flaws and things like that. But we are seeing an uptick in that sort of traditional hacking. It's very useful for if people do get into your systems. Traditionally, they would just kind of take all your data, and maybe somebody would look at it and sort of figure out if there's something we can blackmail you with, or maybe we'll blackmail you with your clients or something. Again, people can point AI at, the list of all the files on your server and say, here's 10,000 files. Can you pick out the top 100 that look like something I could exploit? And it really speeds up the cycle of ransom and blackmail. So, to that end, what we're seeing is incident response timelines, on our end as an IT provider have to really tighten up. The moment there's a breach, it has to be locked down sort of right away. And a lot of the time, maybe 5 years ago, you'd have a couple days, somebody would get in and they'd usually sort of sit and wait. Things are happening quickly, like overnight now, because they've got 10 times as much capability on their end because they've got AI tools. So it's a force multiplier on both ends. But again, the threat isn't new. It's just they're doing a better job of acting on it. And so that's what we're seeing in terms of the kind of like outside in threats. AI is basically just supercharging everything. Again, be a little bit more paranoid about emails and even certain phone calls, especially if it's something weird like senior partner probably doesn't need iTunes gift cards and stuff like that. So just make sure you're talking to your staff or sign up for security awareness training through your IT provider is always really good. Even I do it at our firm, and sometimes I get the answers wrong, which I probably shouldn't admit, but it's good to keep current on this stuff and kind of see examples of what's out there and just have a healthy suspicion. Not too much paranoia though, that's exhausting, but have a little bit of suspicion with what comes in. So we're going to jump into probably the more interesting part of this subject is how do we stay secure while using AI? There's a new tool every day. Microsoft's adding something, Clio's adding something. Everybody claims theirs is the latest and greatest, and it doesn't make mistakes, and it's totally secure. Some of that's true, some of it's not. It's good for firms to be what I would say disciplined about choosing what they're going to use and how they're going to use it. So to that end, I've just put together kind of some high level stuff of what to look at when you're choosing a tool. So the first thing is, where does the data go? Is it staying in Canada? Is it going to the States? Does that matter to you? That will obviously be very specific to your practice and what you do. Unfortunately, as we know, most of these companies are American. Canadian data residency can be challenging. Even Microsoft Copilot, it is Canadian data residency at rest. There's no guarantee they're not processing data on servers that are in the States. So if that stuff is important to you and your firm, you really need to look very closely at what's being used. The second question is your data, when you are interacting with the AI tool, are they taking that and using it to train their model to improve their service? This matters because you may think that it is a drop in the bucket of a much larger pool, but time and time again, we have seen exploits where you can trick an AI into basically word for word divulging the contents of a document that was at some point uploaded to it. So anything you put in, if they haven't told you that they're not saving it, there is a chance that someone in the future could get that document word for word. No matter how much they say it's chunked out and that kind of stuff, there are ways to do it. To my knowledge, none of the AI providers have a process in place to stop that from happening. I'm not sure it's even mathematically possible, given how it works, but we'll see. So that's the number one question is, when I'm interacting with this AI, is it using my data to train the AI? The second thing to look for is, this is an American thing, a BAA, and it's often seen with healthcare providers. So people that are dealing with healthcare information in the States will often have to sign a BAA with their IT provider, as well as Microsoft, anybody that's interacting with that data. You almost certainly do not need that as a Canadian firm. However, it's a really good test to look at a tool and say, do they offer it? Because if they offer it, they've got the framework in place, they're thinking about security, you'll be able to get documents from them that will disclose how they process your data and all that kind of stuff. So it's a sign of maturity and it's a sign of caring. So definitely something that's like a huge plus when you're looking at tools. Do they offer BAA? Great. Even if you don't need to go through that process, again, the fact that they offer it is a super good sign. The biggest single one is, are you paying for this tool? If you are using free ChatGPT or free version of whatever, it is extremely likely that they are using your data to train the AI. And for most firms, that's a no-no. So paid tools often, paid Claude, for example, they don't use it to train because you're paying. But as they say, if you're not paying for it, you're not. That's not the service. You're the product, not the product you're using. So watch out for that. And it's a tough one because you do have to talk to all your staff and say, look, you can't go use Chat GPT for free. Or you can use it for marketing, but you can't put client data in it. So you do have to have that discussion within your firm and have a policy around it. And there's never been a situation where I've recommended any of our clients use a free AI tool. There's tons of paid ones, and they tend to actually work a lot better when you go up to the paid models. They're better and faster and smarter anyways. So it's usually well worth the $20 or $30 a month. The last thing is, if you have cyber insurance, and if they aren't asking you about this, they're going to ask you next time you renew. What are you using? How are you using it? And have you let them know? We haven't seen any cases where there's been claims that we've seen, and I haven't read anything major about it, but this will come up. And eventually it will be like any other data storage where you're going to have to tell your insurance provider who, what, where, when, and they're going to care about that. So be prepared for that. Those questions are coming. If you don't have cyber, I highly recommend getting it. It is like the number one way that firms are seeing large financial issues is through cyber attacks. Having insurance in place, at the very least, will pay the bill for people like us to come in and fix it, so that you're not on the hook for that. And most of the cyber carriers have actually great teams on staff for incident response. They'll even hook you up with like PR people and stuff like that if you need it. So it can be very valuable. One of those things, obviously, you never want to have to use. But again, I highly recommend that your firm has cyber insurance if it doesn't already. So again, I kind of rambled into this on my last slide, but choosing AI tools, don't use the free consumer tiers of it. There are no shortage of specialty legal AI tools. That's a whole other webinar talking about the efficacy of them, but certainly use ones that are designed for law practices and use paid versions of it. Generally speaking, my policy is if it goes into ChatGPT, it's gone. Perhaps they say it's not, hopefully it's not, but I would be very leery, and definitely a no-no with free tools of uploading documents as a whole and things like that. Copilot seems to be quite good about keeping the stuff privileged. So, the logic also being Microsoft already probably has access to everything anyways. So, what's one more tool? But just have a healthy skepticism of what you're uploading. And unless you're very sure that they're not going to take that data and train on it, if it's been uploaded, you have to kind of assume it's been put into public in one way, shape, or form. So that's the black and white thinking that I sort of take when I'm using it. I need this contract reviewed, or can we review this setup or whatever? Would I be okay posting this on my LinkedIn? No. Well, then I probably shouldn't be uploading that document as a whole into my free ChatGPT chat. So like I said, the enterprise tiers, ChatGPT Teams, Enterprise, Claude Pro. I personally am a Claude person, but it's kind of everybody has their own flavor. And obviously Copilot. Copilot's probably, in terms of the general AI providers, Copilot's probably the best in terms of being able to sort of trust that data sovereignty. But again, if this is important to your firm, just take a look at your contract with it. If you don't have that, or you buy through your IT provider, that's something they'll be able to provide for you. And again, if you don't have a data agreement and you didn't pay for it, just don't put anything confidential into it. If you are using free tools, or if you don't trust the tools, you can still do stuff, just don't put specific information in it. So, for example, write something like draft a demand letter for a commercial landlord dispute where the tenant's withholding $45,000, rather than saying draft a demand letter for Inderley Incorporated versus the city of Hamilton at whatever. That would leak out. And that's the type of specific stuff that has leaked out and has been sort of pulled out of AI models through specific prompts in the past once it gets folded into the model. So, incognito search kind of mindset is useful, and you can get sort of 90% of the benefit of a lot of what people are using AI for, just doing it that way. And then you can get the document that it spits out and go from there. Obviously, you can't be submitting documents as a whole from an AI tool anyways, so you'll have to be going through everything to review for accuracy, and you can add the details back in at that point. Last thing is, as I've alluded to, you need a policy. Doesn't matter how big your firm is, large or small. I highly recommend that the powers that be at your firm draft a policy, have the conversations now about what tools are we using. You might be surprised if you haven't had this conversation within your firm. You can ask, say, what AI are you guys using? You're going to get like 5 different things back, and you might be shocked at you've got somebody uploading stuff to free chat GPT because they didn't know. So have that conversation, find out what people are using, and decide which ones you're going to use. Um, Most firms will settle on one or two. Copilot is a good starting point. It's certainly not always the best, but that's a great entree into it. You do have usually some available through your Office 365 plan. So that's the most common one we see. But we do have clients that just went and got ChatGPT Teams and things like that. So it's whatever you like, whatever works for you. And obviously, the ones through Clio and Lexis and things like that are great. So decide what you're going to use and make that a policy. It's odds are your IT's maybe not going to be able to enforce that, but at least if you have the policy in place, hopefully your staff will follow that and you won't have exposure to things that you shouldn't have. The second is data classification. So when you're using these tools, what are you as a firm comfortable with uploading to these tools, knowing that perhaps the data will be used for training, or perhaps the security honestly isn't the best. We're seeing breaches every single day with AI tools. So even if they say it's secure, what level of trust do you have in that? And ultimately, what are you okay being leaked? Again, just taking names and specifics out of documents is often enough. Scrub it for specifics and then off you go. But have a policy for that. Not everybody's thinking about this kind of stuff, and this might be news to half the people in your firm. So build a policy and just say, look, if you're going to use it, do it this way. Don't put specifics in. Review your requirements before client delivery. That is basically, if you are going to use AI tools, especially for document drafts, it's going to be your job, obviously, to make sure that it was done right, doesn't meet the requirements, things like that. And does your client, if you're, say, working with a large client, they may have data protection policies that prohibit you from using AI tools in their service. So you got to make sure that the client's okay with that, or they haven't specifically excluded you from doing that. You need an incident reporting path if something goes wrong. That's the same as any other IT issue. Who do they tell? Do they feel like they're going to get in trouble? Is your IT company going to respond? Is your insurer going to respond? Is somebody within your firm in charge of this? It's good to know who to go to before you're panicking, going, oh my God, we just uploaded this entire matter folder into ChatGPT free. What do we do? Who do we call? It's a little easier if you've got answers beforehand. And if you are working with an IT firm such as ours, let them know what you're using and have a quick conversation with somebody that knows this stuff. And they'll say, yeah, do this, don't do that. Here's what happens, that kind of thing. Always better to have those answers beforehand. Set a review cadence. When I originally did this, I set an annual review cadence. I think given the landscape, it probably needs to be a little bit more frequent than that. I would say every 6 months. And if your firm's really tech forward, every 3 months, just very briefly touch base with everybody in the firm and just say, hey, what tools are you using? Have you started using any new AI tools? How are you using it? It's great from a security perspective. It's also great from somebody might surface and say, yeah, I just saved like 4 hours using XYZ for this. And then half the firm didn't know about that. So it can also save you a lot of time and money. It's not all doom and gloom. These are useful tools sometimes. So frequent review cadence for that is important. But I would say at least annually, again, probably twice a year, just given the landscape. And that'll calm down in a few years and things will get established. But it's kind of the Wild West right now. So. So your to-dos from this is obviously a lot of information, and like everything to do with AI, everybody's got an opinion. Everything's kind of gray. So what do we do about this? This is just a couple things I would walk away and do right now if you haven't already done it. The standard one is make sure you have multi-factor authentication on everything. It's not really an AI thing. That's just a best practice. So go do that. If you don't have MFA on anything you use, get MFA on it. Life is good. If you do have clients where you are transferring, especially money, wiring money, make sure you have that callback process in place with them. It's very quick. It's just like, hey, just want to confirm this is your main office number, or this is the extension for your CFO. This is the person we're going to call if something happens. Done, put it on file. That way, if you do get a phishing email or a fake call saying, hey, update our wire details, you know who to call to make sure that that's a real thing. Highly recommend security awareness training. And if you've been following my webinars for a long time or listening to me rant on LinkedIn, this is something my opinion has changed on over the years. Today, I think that security awareness training is a nearly a must-have for firms. Like I said, even I take it. It's just a great way to show people what the bad stuff looks like, and just raise a little bit of awareness. A good, security awareness training program is going to be like 15 minutes a month, if that. It's not a lot, but it's just a little bit of time to just get in the mindset and say, what are we looking at here? Have a vendor assessment policy. Now, this is obviously a little bit more work. So as a lot of firms might just say, look, we only use Copilot or we only use the Clio AI, whatever. That's fine. That'll do. If you're a larger firm or you're a little less regulated, maybe you've got a bunch of different practices and everybody kind of does things different ways. Maybe the policy just says, look, no free tier. You have to be on a paid one, that kind of thing. But again, it doesn't have to take a super long time, but just have a policy in place. Your insurance company's going to love it and will eventually require it as well. So that comes with that. And have an incident response plan. This is not much different than any other IT incident as it is, but I think the biggest thing with sort of AI tool related incidents is that people don't often realize that there was a potential data breach. So what's the plan, and does your staff know that, hey, I just uploaded this entire Matter folder into ChatGPT free? Somebody might just be like, oh, it's fine. I just closed the window and off we went, not realizing that maybe does need to generate a conversation just to understand what happened. Doesn't mean there's always something to do, but you as a firm need to define like, what is a data leak and what do we do about it? And again, this isn't like huge doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be a huge deal. It's just good to have that in place. And again, it's just to raise awareness within your firm about the risks of this stuff. So that's it. Yeah, that's all the information. Hopefully it wasn't too much to pack into half an hour. I've left our contact info up here. If you do have any questions, feel free to shoot them in the Q&A. Feel free to reach out to our firm at any time if you have any questions that relate to cybersecurity, AI. We do general IT support, like I said, for firms all over Ontario. And in case you weren't aware, this is LSO accredited for professionalism hours. So if that wasn't the reason you were here, bonus, you get to clock these. Lastly, if you have any ideas for webinar topics, something you'd like to hear about related to legal tech or anything around it, we're always open. We actually do most of the suggestions we get. So feel free to shoot us a line and we will take a look at that. So thanks again, everybody, for taking time out of your day to join us, and hopefully we'll see you at the next webinar. Darren, does your team provide training for law firms either remotely or in office? Yes, we do. Yeah, if you would like to get in contact, it's all custom per firm, depending on your needs. But feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to have a chat about that and put something together for you. Thanks. Okay, I think that's it. So yeah, thanks again, everybody, for joining. And we will post a recording of this on our website, probably usually within a week. So if you want to come back to it or you'd like to forward it to anybody else, feel free to do so. I'll end the meeting now. Again, thanks, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.